What's a question that sounds innocent, but in actuality is offensive? Story 1. I'm a first responder, and when people find out I get asked, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? The worst call you've been to? They're trying to make conversation. I get it. The worst call I've been to haunts my dreams. I don't want to talk about it with you. Edit. Some questions about the funniest call I've ever been to. I have a pretty dark sense of humor, so I find some weird shoot funny. But in general, I will say that self-inflicted injuries are a laugh. Not self-harm, to be clear. I'm talking stupid people doing stupid shoot. Happens all day, every day, without violating anyone's privacy. I will say this, nothing, absolutely nothing, ever accidentally ends up in someone's jerk. Ever. This happens more than you'd think. Even if you think it's a lot, go higher. Answer. Years ago, I was making random party chit-chat with someone I didn't know, who turned out to be an EMT. I made a comment about how he must have steadier nerves than me. I tend to freeze in a crisis. Somehow that prompted him into telling gory stories. As it happens, I'm not really put off by that sort of thing. It was only later that it occurred to me that it was kind of odd. I guess he needed to unpack some stuff. Story 2. I used to work as a 911 dispatcher, and the amount of random people that would ask me if I ever listened to someone die astounded me. Like, thanks, I really want to relive that right now in the grocery store. And they never really seemed to realize how messed up that question was. They were always so morbidly cheerful about it. Story 3. When are you going to get a real job? This from my family when I was working as a contract engineer and spending 6 months to 2 years in different locations, earning twice what most engineers were making. I would usually take a month off between projects, and in their eyes I was always out of work and couldn't hold a job. Answer. OMG, I have a degree in animation, but the industry is super fudge up, so I have decided to just work on my own stuff and submit it to festivals, because I don't really care for the job as much as I care for making art. That doesn't mean I can't get a job in the industry. I know plenty of people who founded studios, and I have a degree from an internationally acclaimed university. I can get a job in the industry, I just don't want to. Yet every conversation with family members goes something like, so how's it going getting a job in the field you studied? They literally don't even know the word animation. I'm not actively looking for an animation job. I have some contacts so I can get a job later if I feel like it, but I'm just focusing on my own art for a bit. Yeah, it's quite a hard industry to get a job in. Not really. Many people struggle. I don't. I'm sure it will work itself out. Story 4. What's the craziest thing that's happened at your job? I'm a social worker and my partner is a nurse. The stories aren't crazy in a funny way. They're crazy in an awful and devastating way. I don't want to share someone's worst day of their life and relive a terrible day for me, for your morbid curiosity. Answer. Amen. I volunteer a lot as an EMT, and my quick answer is, you don't want to hear about the craziest call and I don't want to talk about it, but I can tell you about the time cue some funny but harmless story about an outrageous situation. I think people just don't really consider what and how they're asking. They are asking for an amusing anecdote from a walk of life they don't see often, and don't usually realize that crazy, wild, gnarly usually translates to something that haunts us, or at the least would leave them nauseated and or heartbroken. I work a lot of festivals, and there are plenty of things like the time we pulled dozens and dozens and dozens of absolutely partied too hard tweens over the barricade at a Lana Del Rey show for their own safety, or the tripping guy who would run away from us unless we actively kept him talking about World War II tank minutiae. Those are usually the vibe people want, I think. They don't want to hear about the PTSD activations, where we have to tie down patients to stop them from trying to eliminate themselves, or how unbelievable the volume of blood is when esophageal varices go pop. Story 5. Asking me why I'm in a wheelchair, at least if you're an adult. Kids, I will answer all of the questions all day long, or my kids do it for me. In fact, my kids do it for me if an adult asks too. Difference is, with adults, my teenage son will give them a passing stare in response, and my 7-year-old will very sweetly tell them it's actually quite rude to ask such personal questions. Story 6. Did you take your ADD meds? 'Cause I know they're your uppers. My mom, last month, on my birthday, because I was in a good mood and chatty, edited to add that I wasn't on my meds that day. I usually only take them when I have work, and that day was a Sunday. Story 7. You don't drink? Why? People don't drink for a lot of reasons like religion, pregnancy, or just aren't interested. I don't drink due to the fact I overdid it and it started to ruin my life. I always answer, because I got too good at it. That usually makes them laugh and stop the questions. But it's really none of anyone's business. Answer. I always use the John Mulaney quip. I used to drink, but then I did it too much and had to stop. I'll also dead-ass tell people I'm an alcoholic in recovery. If it makes them uncomfortable to hear that, welp, that's how most people feel when asked that question. Most people will usually say, "Oh, good for you," or "How long in recovery? How hard was it to quit?" etc. I'm fine talking about it. Hope it reduces stigma to just be open, honest. But there's still a subsection of people who think it's okay to ask intrusive questions, but tacky to give an honest answer. Story 8. Every question over the years I've received about being a lesbian is usually offensive. Most are some variation of, how do you have intimacy with your wife? Who wears the pants in the family? How do you decide who does what? Have you dated a man before? How do you know you're really a lesbian if you haven't been with a man? Story 9. To me, the mother of an autistic child, what's wrong with her? More often than not, what they mean to ask is, what is her condition, disability, and are just inelegant in their language, but it really sets my teeth on edge. I am sure this is probably the experience of many who are either disabled themselves or have loved ones who are disabled, and people feeling entitled to ask and then doing so in just the worst way. Story 10. Do you work? As a disabled person who floats into dating now and again, I'm not shy about my condition and how I navigate it. I always think they're asking about my job, but they're like, no, can you give hand jobs and stuff? Are you normal? One day, I lost my filter and told the guy my hands weren't the issue, but him not being big enough to make a handful was. I maintained eye contact while I waited on my food, now to go, and he didn't say a word. I left. Story 11. Depends on how the question is asked. A coworker who is old enough to be my grandfather and who I never talked to before asked me, "You're gay, right?" with a knowing nod, reacted to my confusion with a chuckle and just left. I don't mind people asking, but that was an obvious attempt to intimidate. The company thought the same, and now that guy doesn't even dare to look at me. Answer. No, literally. Like once I had this super sweet autistic 5th grader in my summer school, and she came up to me and asked, "Are you a boy who used to be a girl or a girl who used to be a boy?" because she wanted to know how to refer to me, which was incredibly sweet of her, except she did it in front of other kids, so she did end up outing me. I wasn't really stealth, thankfully, and got to use it as a little teaching moment for the kids, but did have to tell her why that could be rude to ask, and even then, don't ever ask it in public. She felt really bad. She's such a good kid, and way better than so many adults on that subject. Story 12. What are you? This is what ignorant people say when they're trying to find out what ethnicity you are, because they can't tell by looking at you. Because if you aren't white, they can look at you and know what you are, so they know how to treat you and what stereotypes you fit. Story 13. How are you always so skinny? Or remarks like, must be nice not to have to worry about what you eat. No, 'cause actually I have to force myself to eat more than I want to, so I don't turn into a bag of bones and cry when I look in the mirror and can see each rib. Story 14. Why are you in a wheelchair? I've been a chair user for 10 years now, and my answer is quite complicated. I've worked out a much shorter answer, and for strangers, I just say, I don't discuss private medical information with strangers. I've had a couple of people who have pushed for a real answer, and one guy nearly got aggressive. I said to him, when you meet someone new for the first time, what's one of the first questions you ask? He didn't reply, so I said, what's your name? Got silence from him again. I said, that is never the first question I get asked, because nobody cares what my name is, only why I'm pushing my jerk around in a hunk of metal. He said that was a fair point and left it alone after that. It would be nice if people asked my name first. Story 15. How much, insert Native American tribe here, are you? Question is never asked of anybody else's ancestry. Blood quantum was a concept started by colonizers as they tried to determine how close they were to wiping out the native peoples. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and my family can be traced back to the mid-1700s. But generally, the first thing people ask is, how much Cherokee are you? And it's a painful question because it implies I have to prove myself. When I tell them I'm also British or Italian, that question has never come up. Story 16. I'm colorblind, and the first thing people do when you tell them is point to the nearest thing and ask, what color is that? It's so incredibly offensive and annoying to be tested. If someone told you they were deaf, would you immediately shout in their ear to be sure? Answer. I do ask things like that when I find out someone is colorblind so that I can get a sense of what they're seeing and can take it into account if I'm describing things or pointing something out. It's especially important at work so I can ensure that whatever I'm presenting is clear and readable for them. Color blindness and severity vary so widely from person to person. It's important to understand what they're seeing so I can adjust accordingly. Edit. Just the other day at a meeting, we found out one person was colorblind when we put up a training readiness slide. Green was good, red meant overdue. After he announced he couldn't tell if he was good or not, the meeting devolved into everyone trying to figure out what colors would work best for him so that we could change it for next time. Story 17. Like half the shoot I get asked on the daily as a trans person. You do not need to know what surgeries I have had or what is in my pants or how I fudge or any of that. It is not your business unless you are trying to get into my pants, in which case I am engaged. Story 18. My white family asking me what part of Mexico my Hispanic family is from. It's compounded by the fact that A, my Hispanic family can trace its roots to American land further back than my white family can, and B, the part of Mexico my Hispanic family is from was stolen by the U.S. And of course, C, the wild assumption all Latinos are Mexican. Also, when I explain this to them, they then get offended. The audacity. Answer. My husband is the same. His family has always lived in Southern California, back to when it was part of Mexico. His family went to bed one night as Mexican citizens and woke up the next morning as Americans. He has been asked straight up if he's legal. He always explained U.S. made his family into citizens themselves. Same with lots of other Mexican Americans. They're always so offended. It's funny and sad at the same time. Story 19. When are you having more kids? First, not everyone wants kids. Second, not everyone can afford kids or as many kids as they'd like to have. Most importantly, miscarriage and fertility issues are extremely common. Chemical pregnancies and first trimester miscarriages happen all the time. I've known people who wanted kids but gave up trying because the process was too stressful. I've known people who lost a baby during their second trimester of pregnancy, to say nothing of people who have lost a child after it was born. Bringing another life into the world is difficult, dangerous work. There is often grief mixed in with joy. When I want to ask about this, I say, are you thinking about kids or have you chosen the money freedom route? People who don't want kids enthusiastically tell me what they want to do with all their money and freedom. And people who do want kids laugh and talk a little about where they are in the journey. Story 20. As a former first responder, what's the worst thing you've ever seen? People ask that, then get surprised when I tell them a story about a dead baby, or collecting pieces of a teenager off the side of the road, or having to pick up a person that's been dead for so long that they've rotted to the point that you accidentally rip their arm off while trying to get them into a body bag. Seriously. You're asking them to relive some of the most horrible shoot they've ever seen. Shoot that would straight up break a lot of people. Just don't. Instead, ask something like, what's the funniest or most interesting thing? You'll still likely get a fudge up tale, but at least they won't have to go suppressing shoot all over again afterwards. Story 21. When are you two getting married? Meanwhile, I have to do everything to not go into whole spiel about how badly me getting epilepsy halfway through put us both behind in life. We did go ring shopping recently, so I'll edit if there's an update one day. Story 22. My wife took our adopted son, 15, to pitch at his baseball game. He's 61 and skinny while my wife is 53 and small. A parent from the visiting team asked my wife who her son was. She pointed at the pitcher, and the lady commented on how tall he and how short my wife is, and then said, his father must be really tall. My, usually humorless, wife replied, I have no idea what the father looks like. Shut her up. Story 23. I'm an IVF mom. The number of people who have asked why we didn't adopt instead is insane. There are a lot of reasons, random stranger, none of which are your business. People don't ask this to their friends who conceived without medical assistance. Why do you feel entitled to know why we made the choice that we did? Story 24. Commenting from my best friend. Nosy school mom. Why are you single? Where's dad? Friend. Oh, he's dead. School mom. Oh, how did he die? Friend. Tragic end. School mom. Oh, in what way? Friend. He shot himself in the face. Femke. Stop asking. Honestly, if I'd been there, I'd have thrown hands. Story 25. Who is the real mother? My wife and I are a married couple. After being married for a while, we decided that we wanted to expand our family. I was pregnant, my wife not. There is no difference for our son in biological parent versus non-biological parent. It seems very innocent, but it made my wife feel so bad so many times. What does anyone want her to say? Yeah, it's my son, but I am not really his mother? So weird. Plus, why on earth do you need to know this? There is literally nothing people can do with this info. Story 26. It's really innocuous, but you're so talented really minimizes the amount of work people put into their craft. My wife is an artist and sells work at art shows. She always gets the, "You're so talented," and she doesn't mind at all. But I know she works 7 days a week and puts her heart and soul and blood, sweat, and tears into her work. Talent is the least of it. Story 27. You're so articulate and well-spoken. Always said when I was working retail at a cell-service company I used to work at in my 20s, and the Apple store thereafter. Always buy a white males too. Someone said it at my current place. Also tech but not retail, thank God. And I asked them what made them say it. Him speaking in the same manner as everyone else? Seeing him scramble to think of an answer, realizing what he was potentially insinuating either by accident or a purposely microaggression, was the highlight of my day, LOL. 'Cause which is it? Are you surprised because I'm a woman in tech? Or because I'm black and you figure we all speak slangy Ebonics all the time? Either way, F right off, LOL. Story 28. When a loved one dies of lung cancer, and someone asks, did they smoke? It doesn't matter if they did smoke, motherfucker. They suffered from cancer and died. Don't look for a reason to blame them. And newsflash, the lungs are an organ and susceptible to cancer, and smoking, though increases the risk, isn't always the cause. Edit. Autocorrect embarrassment. Story 29. We adopted both of our boys. We adopted one, and then two 4 years later. I get asked, are they brothers? Usually I just say yes because they are. But what people are really asking is if they're biologically related. And to me, that's like asking a woman if her kids all have the same baby daddy. It's none of their business. Or they ask, why were they given up? They each have their own story, and it's not mine to tell. Story 30. Not offensive, but the small talk questions I get asked at the grocery store I work always come in this order. Do you go to college? No. Do you have kids? No. Do you want kids? I might adopt when I have more money. Please follow the instructions on the pin pad. Story 31. When I told people my sister was dying of cancer. OMG, does she have kids? No. Is she only of value if she had kids? Is it only bad to die of cancer if you are a mother? Does it not matter she had a lot of friends and family who would miss her? Because it would be worse that she was dying if she had kids? Luckily, the people who I asked why they asked the question were very apologetic. Story 32. Aren't you too old for plushies? Plushies do not have an age limit. For many people, especially neurodivergent people, plushies are the reason they're able to sleep. Plushies can also be a way of healing from trauma, PTSD, etc. They can be mementos of a loved one who has passed. Story 33. For kids or teenager who left or were taken out of their homes, why did you leave? It's just such a rude and insensitive thing to ask, and I don't get what answer do they expect to get. Oh yeah, it's just that my parents are extremely abusive, or, yeah, my father violation me. Haha, like come on, I just met you. Do you really want to hear my whole life story? And I also don't get why do they think I want to tell them that. Also, to add to the unwanted and uncomfortable conversation, do you ever see your family? Are your parents dead? Do you miss your family? Are your parents alcoholic? Did your parents beat you? Do you have a dad? Just don't. Please don't. Story 34. Where did you get those scars? I wonder why someone might have old straight-line scars on their arms and wrists. It's a mystery. I don't harm anymore. Haven't for years. But just don't ask that. Scars come from deep, probably very painful, injuries, traumatic surgeries. Sometimes they're inflicted on people by abusers. If it's a funny story, it'll probably come up naturally sometime. If it's not volunteered by someone, they probably don't want to dwell on it. Story 35. Personally, have you lost weight? I've never had a good relationship with food. Growing up during the early 2000s, I had an eating disorder. I have chronic pain and respiratory issues, so exercising is extremely painful. Instead of addressing my pain and lungs ruined from COVID, doctors put me on Ozempic. I feel like shit all the time. Side effect of Ozempic. My doctor told me that it was too bad that I wasn't diabetic, so I could get Ozempic for free. My mom died due to complications caused by diabetes after decades of being sick. If it was available to the public earlier, my mom might still be alive. I've noticed that I've been treated better by the general public. So, a whole bunch of not-so-nice emotions pop up. Story 36. Asking a trans person anything about their body. You may just be curious or even interested in intimacy dating, but those kinds of questions are not for casual conversation, especially if you barely know the person. It's super weird that anyone would want to know what's in a stranger's pants just by looking at them anyway. You can be attracted to a person and see if you're intimacy compatible later. And all the, oh, but what if it's a gay attraction, can go away forever, please. If you are a consenting adult interested in other consenting adults, it shouldn't matter if you're gay, straight, bi, etc. Story 37. The other day, someone asked me, are you autistic? I mean, is it BC I'm a little socially awkward? What if I actually am? I didn't take bad blood from that, but it did make me feel like I had some sort of terminal disease or some shoot. Like, please chill, LOL. Story 38. Why didn't you have a kid of your own? I adopted my stepdaughter when she was 5. I'm the only dad she's ever known. She was kind of a miracle since it almost eliminated my wife. Also, the wife and I can't have another kid together for health reasons. Yet for some reason, folks think that it's okay to poo-poo that and somehow infer she's not as much of my child because I wasn't the sperm donor. Story 39. I'm a female in IT. My last job, it was always, are you sure that's the issue? Shouldn't you check with someone else? I had a jerk for a boss, but if someone called him, he would say, is that what Lily at Reddit said? Whatever she said, that's the correct answer. Don't fudge call me to question my hire again. Story 40. I mean, it really can't be that bad, can it? I have chronic pain. And yes, in fact, it is that bad. But honestly, it doesn't matter what it goes for. Don't act like it isn't that bad because you do not know how someone else thinks. You are not experiencing it. You don't know. Story 41. Do you speak English? Young woman conducting a survey asked me, a person of Asian descent living in Canada. That question is completely unnecessary because she could have asked me any English language question, and any answer I give, verbal or nonverbal, will also answer that question. It's also offensive to me as someone who has written over a dozen English language articles for magazines that are distributed across North America and has a degree in it. And it's borderline racist because she wouldn't be asking me that if I was white. Story 42. You cook for your wife? I've gotten asked this very few times, but it's always by old-fashioned people that think me cooking for my wife is wrong. My wife has cerebral palsy, and it's caused her to lose mobility in her left side. So not only do I cook for her, I also take care of her, and there isn't anything changing that. Story 43. So when are you going to have kids already? Well, Susan, besides the fact that it's absolutely none of your darn business, I just had my second miscarriage 3 weeks ago. But thank you so much for asking, you inconsiderate cow. Susan, obviously, is the kind of jerk who can't even fathom people remaining childless by choice. Story 44. How come you've never dated? If you like him, just ask. Sorry, Mr. Girls just keep falling for me. It's insecurity, self-esteem issue, childhood trauma, societal beauty standards, hormone imbalance, and so many more scars than on my face that I carry, which makes me not simply ask them out. Story 45. You're Native American? But why don't you look like one? Colonization, my dude. I look like Casper the Friendly Ghost because I work night shift, live in a state shaped like winter gear, where summer is 4 months of bad sledding. And I, like my ancestors, did our best to blend in like concealer with the white folks because our lives literally depended on it. What is it that I'm supposed to look like? Am I supposed to wear a buckskin dress with feathers in my hair? Like, I literally had a boss who said she was scared of going to a reservation in the Upper Peninsula and asked, in a room full with all of the nurses she oversaw, over half of whom were Black or Native, what if they don't speak English there? What do we do? One of my colleagues looked at her and said, you've got to be fudge joking. Another said, are you seriously asking this? I looked at her and said, nope, time for you to start learning Anishinaabe. But seriously, don't ask Native Americans, First Nations, Maddie's people why they don't look like fudge cartoon characters and shoot. Colonization fudge a lot of shoot up for so many of us. Story 46. My mom is a Southern boomer. Growing up, I went to a really diverse school and had friends of different cultures and ethnicities. My mom would always ask them where they were from. Inevitably, when they responded with a nearby town, she would continue with, "But where are you from?" At 16, I couldn't exactly place why that felt so hurtful. But now I just realize it was a horribly racist microaggression. Story 47. Where do you live? Which building do you work in? Where do you go to school? It sounds innocent, sure. And it often is just a conversation starter or genuine interest. But telling a stranger where they can usually find you, or announcing loudly to a restaurant Malik where they can usually find you, isn't particularly safe, especially if you are a woman or a minor. Story 48. I can't make it. Something came up. What happened? Why not? Etc. Sorry, Linda. Just found out a family member died. My girlfriend missed her period and I can't focus. My doctor told me to come in immediately. I am fudge tired. Or, I just can't stand the thought of listening to your 20-minute stories about nothing while you're the only one laughing. Whatever the reason, there is a reason I left it vague. I don't want to fudge talk about it, hence me not working, making it out, etc. Life happens. Don't make it more awkward. Story 49. I was talking to a coworker of mine and mentioned that I was at a particular store. She said, "That's in, insert whatever affluent city is in your town." I replied, "Yes, that's the one," as they have multiple locations. Story 50. Maybe niche. I'm a redhead. I detest this BTW because my hair's fudge orange, not red. Wow, did you dye your hair? Yeah, I dyed my fudge eyebrows, my beard, my mustache, the hair on my head, my arms, my chest hair, my legs, my back and jerk. All of it. Yep, I fudge dyed it orange. This questions is so fudge annoying. Close second. Wow, are your pubes the same color? IDK Sharon, your hair's brown. Are you pubes naturally fudge blonde? That's how that works, right? Story 51. I once played golf with my work colleagues. They're massive enthusiasts. I've done about 5 rounds in my entire life, so I'm just there as the token idiot for them to laugh at. Not that I minded. It's a day off work. For all their office chat about golf, not one of them wanted to tee off first. So I graciously offered. Headed it, went about 30 feet. Not the best. The next colleague hits it. It goes far, but it massively swerved to the right. Now, believe me when I say that I don't know any of the golf lingo. But remembering a conversation in the office, I naively asked, "So is that what's called a slice then?" The other 2 colleagues started wetting themselves laughing. The guy that sliced it was fuming at that. Apparently, it was an absolute burn to start the round off with when I was asking a genuine question. Story 52. Why don't you adopt? I dislike this question with a fiery vortex. I dislike it because, 1, it assumes that the person in question has never considered adoption before, which is incredibly stupid. Humans have been adopting kids as long as there has been humans. No childless person is going to slap their head and say, "Ah, man, why didn't I think of that?" People know adoption is an option. Don't be the idiot who brings adoption up as if it is some novel solution that no one else knows about. 2, it assumes the issue is simply a supply chain problem. Person wants kid. Kids need homes. Problem solved. Adoption is not about making adults into parents. It's about finding the best homes for kids in need. Adoption also is a calling. People adopt because they want to, not because they failed to make bio kids, and this is their second option. 3, it was oversimplifies what is a very complex, expensive, and often heartbreaking process. I have multiple friends' family who have adopted, and none of them had a simple, cheap, stress-free experience. People act like adoption is as easy as picking up a gallon of milk at the store. Story 53. Who invited you? At a party. Depends on tone. Could be innocent, but to me always puts the person being asked on the defensive, like they have to prove they're supposed to be there. It's a party. I'm here. We're mingling. Unless I'm being a bummer or intruding on an intimate get-together, don't worry about it. Story 54. I'm a black woman and have lived in all-white neighborhoods. Some of the first ones that could to mind are, do you know, insert random black person. Answer, I do not know every black person. Oh, would you like to meet, insert other black person at that party? You'll love them. Why does your hair do that? Can I touch your hair? Can you dance? Can you tap dance? This one happened when I was waiting tables, and I told the customer was an actress. Again, only black person in the room. Any question that starts with, why do black people? Story 55. I have a blind dog in a vest with blind dog written down the side in giant letters on both sides of his torso. People still come up and say, OMG, poor boy, is he blind? 1. No, he's not poor. In fact, I promise he's living his best life right now. 2. And I don't mean to be rude, but can you read? Just ask me what it's like to have a blind dog. I promise we're both friendly AF. Story 56. A lot of passive-aggressive people ask a question that on the surface requests information, but is obviously an offensive statement. For example, how old is your car? What happened to your hair? Why are you just standing there? Why doesn't your husband get a job? Are you going to eat all that? Why did you major in poetry? What's wrong with you? Feel free to add your own examples. Story 57. Have you had the surgery? Like fudge if only there was only one. Best I can do is 3 surgeries with the final one requiring 2 to 4 stages. So more likely 5 surgeries. And it varies so much from person to person. Not to mention these people don't realize that you can be on the wait list for years before finally getting it. Story 58. What are you? I'm multiracial, racially ambiguous appearing, and born in the U.S., so I've had people ask me the typical, where are you from? Where are you really from? After they don't like my answer of saying I'm from Illinois, they ask, what are you? Me. I'm human. What are you? Story 59. I work in EMS and frequently get asked what is the worst call you've been on, or what's the worst thing you've seen. Why, thank you for asking me to relive that experience. I usually respond with a story about the absolute hellholes and substances dens and absolute poverty I've seen less than a half-mile from where we are right now. Story 60. If you're an American born and raised here, you have a SSN, birth certificate, and own a passport, but your parents are naturalized citizens who immigrated to this country. The question, where are you from, hits a nerve because with the way they ask it, you can tell that it's with the implication that the person asking this question already thinks that you weren't born here just because you're not a white American. It's even more annoying when they emphasize the question as if that makes it any less offensive. I'm from here and was born and raised here. Thanks. Do not assume I wasn't. Just ask, what's your family's heritage? Like a normal person, if that's what you meant by, where are you from? What's your heritage, or what's your ethnicity, are perfectly fine questions to ask instead, because it acknowledges the person's familial background without giving off the impression that you think they're foreign just because they have a name you're not used to or aren't European American. Story 61. Those of you who've lived in Japan know the one. When are you going back to your own country? I know many don't plan to live in Japan permanently, but there's this expectation that you will leave one day. It's not offensive at all when it's phrased differently, like, are you going to stay in Japan the rest of your life? But the other way is just an assumption that you will leave, or worse, an implication that you should eventually leave. Story 62. This question wasn't actually offensive, but it turned out hilarious. My sister and I were at a bridal shower for my future DIL. My sister and I didn't know too many people here, so we sort of sat there like a couple of wallflowers until my DIL's mom attempted to pull us into the conversation. The room went into an awkward silence. Then my future DIL says, Mom, that was Tom's, my husband, mother you met last week. She apologized profusely, then proceeded to explain the mistake. But some people just don't know when to shut up. She goes on, you look so much like her. My sister, still in her happy place, says, oh God, no, that woman's butt ugly. Story 63. A visible, gnarly scar. And people always ask, OMG, what happened? I've been telling them some version of, I fell into the tiger pit at the zoo as a kid, and they had to see my whole arm back on. Most people, recognize the sarcasm, and then go on to mind their own business. Edit, clarity. Story 64. Asking a trans person about their old name. I get it. Sometimes it's just innocent curiosity, but the name I chose is my name, and my old identity was causing me incredible pain. And personally, I don't want people to know it so they can't accidentally call me by my old name. Try explaining that to a stranger, though. At least if they ask about my genitals, I can tell them to fudge off without feeling guilty. Story 65. I'm trans, and the most common ones when people find out is, have you had the surgery? And, are those, my breasts, real? As if I want to talk about my genitals and medical history with a stranger. Honorable mention goes to, what's your real name? There was also the time a guy was like, I just find people like you so interesting. Story 66. Why don't you talk to your mother, father, family? They're your family. You should be grateful to have them. People have very valid reasons for not talking to their family members. Maybe I'm not a bad ungrateful son or daughter. Maybe they're a bad parent. Story 67. Oh no, what happened? Whenever I use my mobility aids for the first time at a new job, either 1. Nothing happened. I'm just like this, and now you've made it weird. 2. Something traumatic and awful happened. You don't want to hear about it, and I don't want to share, especially not at the water cooler. 3. Something mundane happened, and now I'm like this, and you've made it weird. Regardless, there's nothing you can offer or do to help, so now you're just stuck with the knowledge of why I'm like this. Where do you intend for the conversation to go from here? I don't actually want or need your pity. I want to refill my darn coffee before my next meeting. Ableds have such trouble understanding that sometimes it just be like that, and they have no control or agency over it. My casual existence is also an uncomfortable reminder to them that the only things keeping them from joining this minority are luck and time. In my case, it happens to be a semi-botched gynecological surgery. I don't want to share that piece, or any piece, of my medical history with Susan in accounting. Story 68. Getting asked if my children are from the same father and if they're baptized. No and no. But did you die? At first I thought it was just a southern thing, as we were in Georgia at the time. But then I moved back to NY and got asked if they had the same BD some more. WTF. Story 69. To a mailman. I live down the street. Can you just hand me my mail right now? I have 3 or more piles of mail and packages hanging off my body, and I'm using the one free hand I have left to take the pieces off the top of these piles, turn them into one bundle, and drop them into the next mailbox. When you're just going to get it like an hour later with no extra hassle on my part. But people get crazy when you respond, no. Story 70. As a parent who lost a child and is pregnant again, having small talk questions like this are so exhausting. How many kids do you have? Is this your second or first or whatever, etc.? Story 71. If we have intimacy, do I need to protect myself from an STD? FYI, 12% of people have genital herpes, regardless whether they live in urban and rural areas. Prevention is possible with a doctor's help, and symptoms are manageable. Pregnancy risks are significant, but easily manageable with a doctor's help. Infant mortality and encephalitis in the U.S. is higher than most countries because people in the U.S. are too afraid to speak to their doctor. Other cultures are better able to communicate with their doctors, and until U.S. society shows greater honesty and integrity, our children will continue to suffer. Story 72. What happened to you to a visible disabled person? Like, geez, thanks for reliving a possible horrible memory. I'm not visible disabled by any means. I try to hide it. So have people rudely asking me what's wrong with me and having them being angry over me saying, nothing. I just got antibiotics that turned me deaf from birth. Oops. Story 73. People love to ask me what the worst thing I've seen as a medic is. I usually just tell them the grossest calls instead of the ones with dead kids. Little tip. Asking that is asking a medic to relive probably one of the worst days of their life. Best to keep that little question to yourself. Story 74. Why someone isn't drinking adult beverage, or why they won't even have just one drink. There are so many reasons that a person might not be drinking that can range from fairly surface level, I'm DD, working later, etc., to intensely personal. I'm an alcoholic, on antipsychotics, etc., and you never know which it is. It's also none of your darn business, even if it is a less stigmatized reason. Story 75. I felt terrible at the airport once many years ago. We were all mobbing the gate to board, and this young woman is there with her dog, a lab or something, and I'd never seen a dog get on a plane before, unless it was in a crate getting loaded into the cargo hold. I was bewildered. I was like, how are you able to take a dog on? I love dogs, so it wasn't a complaint. And she said, it's a support dog. And I'm looking at this not blind and seemingly perfectly able person and stuck my foot right in my mouth obliviously by asking, for what? She didn't seem to have anything wrong with her. She said, anxiety. And I was like, oof. Really stuck my foot in my mouth. I've got that, and at the time I told no one for stigma reasons, and I've put this woman in the awkward position of having to say that out loud in the middle of this scrum of people. Probably I wasn't the first to ask, and she was probably not too bothered, but it just felt like such an invasive and insensitive thing to ask once I looked back on it. I was struck dumb and just kind of shrank and hung back as we boarded. Story 76. Are they all your kids? When part of them are obviously different to ethnicities. Yes, we adopted them. They are our children. Or yes, we are fostering them. They are our kids for now. We said we have X number of children. Why is there past your business? Story 77. Have you gained Lost weight? I never felt good in my body, and when someone commented on it, I'd always feel bleh. I got pregnant and felt great. After having my child, my grandfather said, "You look pregnant still." I dislike when anyone talks about another person's body. I feel great again with my body, but when someone says anything, I still get a little bleh. Story 78. As a first-gen Filipino, born and raised in the Midwest, where are you really from? And can you translate this? Sure can't, that's in Chinese, which you identified as Japanese. Basically anything that could be a normal question, if asked with genuine curiosity and framed properly, but done with the intention of somehow embarrassing people of a different ethnic background or culture. Your ex? Are those the people that cultural practice, but worded to sound as degrading or reductive as possible? Story 79. What are you? A question posed to me almost weekly for years because I'm racially ambiguous and speak more than one language. When I respond, a human, I get exasperated sighs and, no, where are you from? Here. Okay, where's your family from? Also here. Or my favorite, polite way of asking, what's your background? Story 80. Why are you always smiling? I was in college working as a barista at the time, and a customer asked me this. Only thing that stressed me out then was college and minimum wage, so it was easier to have an optimistic outlook. But still, people in customer service have to act genial, even if they dislike seeing you every day for the same drink order. SMH. Story 81. Not S question, but a comment. Oh, you lost a lot of weight. Congrats. You look so much better now. It's not okay to comment on people's body, even if you think it's a compliment. Sometimes, especially if I had a bad day, I say something like, yeah, the cancer and the chemo took away my appetite. I love the look on their faces. I do not have cancer, and I lost weight with effort, but still, you shouldn't comment on my body. Story 82. Why aren't you drinking? I'm personally a bit of a drinker and enjoy my beverages probably too much, but it drives me crazy if someone gets an NA beer mocktail soft drink and anyone asks about it. It's absolutely no one else's business, and no one should be made to feel uncomfortable with their choice. Story 83. Dad is Mexican. Mom is Korean. I definitely look mixed, but Asian genes run strong. North Korea or South Korea? How can you eat that stuff? Where did you learn? How long did it take for you to speak English so good? Considering it's my first language, I speak it well. What's your maiden name? The name I just gave you, Ching Chang Chong Miracle Whip Mayonnaise Ranch. Story 84. It's not so much a question, but more insinuating or hinting at, when are we finally becoming grandparents? They mean well, the people that asks these questions, but it hurts like hell. Believe me, Mom and Dad, I want nothing more than to become a father, but clearly having nonstop intimacy for 8 months is not cutting it. Story 85. As a person who struggled for 3 years trying to conceive with my husband, I really dislike questions like, when are you going to have a baby? Or the worst question from his parents, when will we have grandchildren? Did you start the process? Guess what? Now since I am pregnant, they don't give a FK. Please never ask such questions to a couple. You don't know what they are going through and it hurts. Story 86. I'm a trans man. The number of times strangers have asked about my genitalia is ridiculous, ranging from how big is your male body part to asking about surgeries I plan on getting. I appreciate you may be curious, but just as it would be weird for me to ask a cis person how they have intimacy, the size of their bits, or if they plan to have surgeries, it's weird to be asked that too. Unless I am planning to have intimacy with you, or you are a medical professional, you don't need to know. Story 87. I swear I got pregnant with our first child when my husband winked at me one day. By the time the kid was poor, I just hadn't been able to get pregnant again, although we had been trying. When people found out my 4-year-old was our only child, they would ask, don't you want more kids? Maybe I was hypersensitive, but it almost felt as if they were saying, gee, what a terrible mother you are. You don't even like the kid you have, so you're not going to have another one. It was a painful reminder that it just wasn't happening for us. I did eventually get pregnant, and our second child was born just short of 2 months before the older kid turned 5. Story 88. I've had BFRBs since I was preschool. Even after growing up and looking and acting like an adult, people still feel entitled to ask me, why do you do that to your skin? What happened to your eyebrows? What's that on your face? It's especially annoying when a healthcare provider tells me like I'm a little misbehaved child to stop doing that to my skin. Oh wow, what a great idea. Wish I'd come up with that over the last couple of decades. Story 89. Which ones are your real kids? father of 5 children, 3 whom are adopted. We don't broadcast the fact that some of our kids weren't born to us or treat them any differently. And it's not a secret or anything, but people know. It never fails. Meet a new person at a ball game or something. They'll ask, Story 90. A company designs a rectangular garden that must have an area of 200 square meters and is to be surrounded by a path of uniform width. The path increases both the length and width of the garden, and the total area of the garden, plus the path, is 338 square meters. Write an equation to determine the width of the path and find its exact value. I find math offensive. Story 91. It's something I personally have not been asked yet, but I'm dreading the question if it ever comes someday about if my daughter is adopted, where she's adopted from. My husband is Asian, and I'm white, and so far our daughter looks most like him. I've heard stories of people in similar situations getting asked those kinds of questions. So I'm hoping that living in a more diverse area will help decrease the chances of being asked that. Story 92. What are they? When asking in regard to mixed-race kids, the number of times I've been asked this is stupendous, and it's been asked by people of all races. My go-to response, human. Follow-up, asking a pregnant woman if she's having a boy or a girl after being told she's pregnant. What does the intimacy of the baby have to do with the pregnancy, the health of mom and baby, or the future happiness of the family? Story 93. As someone who works in adult retail, the first question most people ask is what my worst experience is. I've worked other retail before, never been asked about worst experiences at any other workplace. I wonder why people think it's okay to ask about someone's worst experiences. That's not something nice to be reminded of. Story 94. Why did you cut your hair short, get an undercut? Usually followed up with, I liked your hair longer. Usually asked by my family at least once a week, because I apparently cannot make decisions for myself at 27 years old and enjoy my hair shorter when it's a lot thicker than the rest of my family's. Story 95. Are you actually a man, woman? What's your actual gender? Made even worse when directed at minors. Tone heavily matters, but it's hard to convey. And no, I don't mean the situation where someone actually wants to properly address the other person. We all know what kinds of people say this. We all know that they say it not to be polite, but because the person they're talking to doesn't fit their personal standards. It's them asking, what genitals do you have? You probably don't have the genitals that I think you have. And I want to know and force you to talk about your genitals. And if it wasn't the case that it's mainly aimed towards trans people or individuals that don't fit into the Western beauty standards, most people would have an issue with it and rightfully call it intimacy harassment. But because the ones affected by it are, quote, not normal in the minds of many people who think like that due to radicalization and propaganda in the first place, nobody cares and even gives applause if it happens. Story 96. Have you tried yoga, meditation, stretching, exercise, home remedy? If you happen to think of it off the top of your head like that, making the assumption we haven't, even after likely years of doctors, is just saying, I don't think you're smart enough to have even tried basic self-care. You are completely inept at your own health issues. Story 97. Which one is the husband-wife to a gay couple? I get people are trying to make conversation, but being gay is probably not the most interesting part of their lives or the thing they want desperately to talk about. A gay marriage should be as dull as a straight one.